Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you three gentlemen for being here with us today. General Saltzman, I'd like to start with you because we do know that space domain awareness is essential for our military operations in space. And for many operations rely on space-based assets like our satellite communications, obviously, in the non-military space. So cislunar space domain awareness has also increased in importance. How is the Space Force collaborating with private sector, academic, and interagency partners to leverage the space domain awareness arena and capabilities?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I can't emphasize this enough. Avoiding operational surprise in the space domain is one of our top priorities. The foundation of avoiding operational surprise is access to data that is collected by a number of sensors. We organically have many of those in the Space Force, but we rely on industry, commercial services, commercial data capabilities. We rely on allies, international partners. The more data you have on the space domain, the better you're able to make sense of what's going on. And so we spend money on it. We have it a part of our commercial space strategy to make sure we can incorporate that data, and we're committed to it.
Is that an increasing capability that you, I mean, it seems to me that would be ever expanding.
You know, it is ever expanding, and so one of the things that I'm starting to realize now is as we increase the amount of data that we're pulling in from other sensors, we have to be able to make sense of that data. And so now we're investing heavily in decision support software, data management tools that help us rapidly pull together.
Is that AI? Is that what you're talking about there?
I don't think it even needs to rise to AI necessarily, but there are some elements of that. But it is automating certainly some of the more manpower-intensive activities that go on.
Right. Well, I understand too that there is some emerging cooperation between the Space Force and the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia. So I'd like to stay in touch with you on those capabilities and because of the radio astronomy that we have out there and have out there for decades. So excited about those possibilities. Secretary Kendall, nice to see you again. You wrote in your statement, something stuck out to me. It says the Air Force is accepting risk across the services modernization accounts in order to maintain minimally accepted near-term operational readiness. This places additional risk on the Air Force's ability to deter and defeat any adversary going forward. Obviously, what caught my eye or ear on that is the minimally accepted. Is that the standard where we are now? And I think that is a minimally accepted standard. I can't even imagine that that's actually an accepted standard the way you phrased it. So could you explain that to me a little bit in more depth?
Thanks, Senator. The availability of our aircraft right now sits at around 60%. To me, that's a minimally acceptable number. It actually dipped a little below that. I have the most recent data here. In part driven by the fact that the V-22 fleet is still not back in the air. It's in the process of getting back in the air. But nevertheless, this is driven by a number of things. It's driven largely by supply chain, driven by availability of depot for throughput, but it's driven by money as much as anything. So we would like to be, if you may remember, General Jim Mattis, when he was secretary, tried to get all our fighter aircraft up to an 80% availability. That effort failed. The resources just weren't there to do it. So we're not where we'd like to be in terms of availability, in terms of current readiness, but it's an acceptable level because we can meet our commitments around the world. We can do the things we anticipate that the joint force may be asked to do, and as far as the air component, particularly in the space components, are concerned. We don't. The point I'm trying to make with what I said in the statement is we can't go below that. We need to stay there. And that, what happened to us in 25 in particular was that our plans were scaled back a little bit because of the Physical Responsibility Act. We support that act. It's again acceptable to us, but we're not moving forward with modernization under it as quickly as I'd like to. We are sustaining the current fleet at a level which is acceptable. We have our foundational accounts, weapon system sustainment, the care of our facilities, our flying hours at levels which we could accept and we could live with, but long term they would be problematic for us. So as we look out over the next few years, we're going to have to try to do better in some of those accounts, but it's acceptable for this year, for 25. And we're moving forward with modernization at a rate which is as fast as our funding allows. And I'd like to go faster there as well. So anyway, the bottom line is that that's what's behind my statement. We had to
Okay.
take small cuts in procurement in order to sustain the research and development for the next generation. And again, those are on the margins, and they're acceptable to us, but they're not where we would like to be.
Let me ask just a quick follow-up question on that. So I suppose when I was reading this, I was reading more on the manpower aspect of readiness as opposed to the operational readiness of the aircraft. Is that a dual problem, or is it mostly on the aircraft issue that you just explained to me?
They're all related. The availability of aircraft affects our ability to fly.
Right.
And the ability of our pilots to train. It affects what our maintenance people can do. We have, I think it's well known, a shortage in pilots right now, rated officers. And some of that is the throughput that our pilot training pipeline, if you will, can absorb. It's, and that's driven by, in part by some of our training aircraft not being as available as we'd like them to be. We just don't have the aircraft hours to train as quickly as we'd like and get as many people through. Overall, I think that and General Alvin and General Saltzman may want to comment on this. I'm less concerned about the people side of this. I think that our people are doing very well. They're getting the training that they need in general. We're talking about increasing the scale of some of our exercises to make them more realistic. And we're trying to orient our training more towards what we call the pacing challenge, the threat that China and a conflict and the conditions that people would experience in a conflict like
Okay.
that. That's a new requirement for us. If we have the time, General Alvin may want to comment on that.
Okay, yes, General?
Couldn't agree with this, with Secretary more. It really is the platforms, but the platforms do drive crew proficiency, maintenance proficiency, and those sorts. So they are related. But I also, we can pick up things in the simulator and those things that can help with some of the skills. We certainly would like to have more aircraft availability to increase the proficiency of our air crews and our maintainers and the like. But I think the first thing is to get the platforms up to speed, and the air crew and maintainers will rapidly follow. But we certainly, when the Secretary talks about redoing some of our exercises, we're trying to get the most out of every flying hour that we can that gives us combat readiness for the pacing challenge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.